My mother lied about my inheritance 4 years. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I'm 36 years old, and for 12 years I believed a lie so completely that I built my entire life around it. The lie was simple: my inheritance was gone. That was what my mother told me. That was what the lawyer at the will reading seemed to confirm. That was what every relative repeated whenever the subject came up. The money was gone, the properties were gone, the investments were gone, there was nothing left. And because I trusted my mother more than anyone else in the world, I never questioned it. Not once. If someone had told me back then that the woman who raised me was secretly living off an inheritance she claimed no longer existed, I would have laughed in their face. I wouldn't laugh now. Because the truth was worse than anything I could have imagined, and it all started with a single letter that arrived 12 years too late. But before I tell you about that letter, you need to understand who my mother was. Linda Brooks had a gift. She could walk into any room and become the victim before anyone realized there had even been a problem. She cried beautifully. She smiled warmly. She remembered birthdays. She brought casseroles to funerals. Everyone loved her. Everyone trusted her, including me, especially me. When my grandfather Arthur died, I was 24 years old. He was the strongest person I'd ever known, the kind of man who built everything with his own hands. He owned rental properties, land, investment accounts, and the family home. Growing up, everyone assumed Grandpa Arthur was wealthy, not private jet wealthy, but comfortable, successful, the kind of man who left something behind, and he always hinted that he planned to. He used to joke that one day I'd own a lake cabin and finally learn how to fish properly. I never cared about the money, I cared about him, but after he died, money became impossible to ignore. At the will reading, the lawyer looked uncomfortable from the moment we sat down. My mother sat beside me holding tissues. She looked exhausted, heartbroken, fragile. When the reading ended, the explanation seemed simple: unexpected expenses, legal complications, taxes, debt settlements. The estate had been drained. There was very little remaining. I received a check for less than $8,000, my mother cried. The relatives sighed. Everyone moved on, including me, or at least I tried to. Life has a way of demanding your attention. I got married, started a business, had a son, bought a modest house, worked hard, built a future. Meanwhile, my mother remained in the same large home she'd supposedly struggled to keep after losing everything. Whenever I asked questions, she always had answers. The market crashed. Property values collapsed. Lawyers took most of it, government fees, probate delays, something. There was always something. Eventually, I stopped asking. Then one Tuesday afternoon changed everything. I was standing in my kitchen sorting mail when I noticed an envelope. Cream-colored, no return address, no company logo, just my name written by hand. Inside was one sheet of paper, 3 sentences. The first sentence said, "Your inheritance was never lost." I rolled my eyes immediately. The second sentence said, "Ask your mother about Property 17. My stomach tightened. Property 17 wasn't random. It was one of Grandpa Arthur's rental properties. A small lakefront cabin he loved more than any other property he owned. Very few people knew he called his properties by numbers. The third sentence said, "If you want the truth, call me." Beneath it was a phone number, nothing else, no name, no explanation. Just a number. I stared at it for hours, then I called. An older man answered. "Evelyn, yes, I've been wondering if you'd ever call." His name was Richard Hale. And the second I heard it, my heart nearly stopped, because Richard Hale wasn't supposed to exist. According to my mother, Richard was a thief, a liar, a con artist. The man who supposedly tried to steal from Grandpa's estate. I'd heard that story for years, yet Richard sounded nothing like the villain I'd imagined. He sounded tired, calm, almost relieved. Then he said something that changed everything. "Your grandfather left you more than $8,000. The room suddenly felt smaller. "What are you talking about?" There was silence. Then he said, "Your mother never told you, did she?" The next day I drove 2 hours to meet him. He lived in a small house outside Boulder, nothing impressive, nothing flashy. Definitely not the home of a man who'd stolen millions. When he opened the door, he looked exactly like someone's grandfather. Gray hair, wrinkled hands, gentle eyes. He invited me inside. Then placed a thick binder on the table. Inside were documents, hundreds of them: property records, tax filings, trust documents, letters, bank statements. At first, none of it made sense. Then he showed me something that made my blood run cold. Property 17, the lake cabin, still existed. It had never been sold, never been lost, never been taken by legal fees, in fact. My mother had been collecting rent from it for 11 years. I felt sick. Surely there had to be some explanation, a misunderstanding, an accounting error, something. There wasn't. Richard kept turning pages, property 12, property 9, property 4, one after another, still active, still generating income, still existing. The inheritance hadn't disappeared. It had simply disappeared from me. I spent 6 hours reviewing documents. By sunset, I had learned something horrifying. My grandfather's estate hadn't been destroyed, it had been redirected. The trust structure had been altered after his death, not illegally, but carefully, very carefully, carefully enough that nobody would question it. Especially not a grieving 24-year-old granddaughter who trusted her mother. When I finally left Richard's house, I couldn't stop shaking. 12 years. 12 years of believing I inherited nothing. 12 years of watching my mother talk about financial struggles. 12 years of helping her whenever she needed money. And all along, she had been sitting on assets worth well over $2 million. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every memory felt different. Every conversation sounded different. Every excuse she'd ever given suddenly looked like a lie. Then I discovered something even worse. The properties weren't the biggest secret. The house was the family home. The place where my mother still lived. The place she'd spent years describing as hers. The place she'd claimed she fought to save. It wasn't hers, it had never been hers. According to the trust documents, ownership had been transferred years ago. To me, I read the document 3 times, then a fourth, then a fifth. The house legally belonged to me. My mother had been living there rent-free while convincing everyone it belonged to her. I remember sitting at my dining room table at 2 in the morning staring at those papers. Not angry, not yet. Just stunned. The betrayal wasn't about money anymore. It was about trust. Because every lie required another lie, every story required another story. And my mother had been building those stories for over a decade. The next morning she called me, completely unaware. "Hi, sweetheart." The same warm voice, the same loving tone. The same woman who'd hidden the truth for 12 years. I almost confronted her right then. Instead, I asked a simple question. "Mom, do you remember Grandpa's lake cabin?" There was a pause. Only a second, but it was there. Then she laughed. "Oh, honey, that place was sold years ago." Sold years ago, a direct lie, a lie I could now prove. And suddenly everything became very clear. She knew every single day, every year, every conversation. She knew, and she chose the lie anyway. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to argue, I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to accuse, I was going to let the documents speak, because facts don't need emotions. Facts only need witnesses. And 3 weeks later, my mother gathered the entire family for Thanksgiving dinner. She thought it would be another normal holiday. She had no idea it would become the day her entire story collapsed.